Welcome to the Mad Love Your Life show. I'm Mary D, the Joy Catalyst, here to be your host and transformation guide. Mad Love is about the mad, making a difference, and love is what we serve up to live a delicious life. My intention is to help you spark new ideas, break limiting beliefs, and align with your deepest dreams and desires. Get ready for laughter, inspiration, and finding your inner roar in every show. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this week's show. Super excited to be here. And I have a super special guest. And I can't wait to share this message with you. You are going to be blown away. And I believe that you're going to be able to take something transformative and walk away with a nugget that will enlighten your life for the rest of your days, whether it's you being the CEO of your personal life or you being the CEO of your company. This is where you can get those goods. So my guest today, her name is Sarah Reuter, and she is a transformative force in the event and hospitality industry. She's dedicated to empowering professionals to thrive beyond the spotlight. Since 2015, she's been on a mission to redefine success and foster holistic well-being amidst the stress of event management. With a journey marked by resilience and liberation, Sarah draws from her own experiences to guide others through the challenges of their profession. From her early days navigating toxic love to her triumphs as an entrepreneur and founder of Elevate Travel Company, Sarah's story resonates with authenticity and purpose. Through her revolutionary programs and immersive experiences, Sarah equips event teams with the tools to transcend post-event stress and embrace post-event bliss. Her approach integrates movement, breathwork, mindset training, and interactive rituals, guiding participants on a sixth senses journey back home to themselves. Beyond accolades and achievements, Sarah embodies the spirit of transmutation, turning pain into power, chaos into peace, and fear into passion. She's not just a speaker, author, and entrepreneur. She's a beacon of hope and transformation for those ready to reclaim their power and find peace in the chaos of planning. Join Sarah and hundreds of event planning professionals on a journey of reimagining and resetting the standards of success for event professionals. And for those of you who are like, hey, I'm not necessarily an event professional, you are still going to get so much value out of today's show because what we always talk about on the show are life lessons and ways that we can always improve our 360 quality of life. So with that, Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So we'll kick off with our question we ask all our guests, which is, what do you know now that you wish you had known before you got started on your path of helping people create post-bliss happiness? Like what's that nugget that you wish you had when you first got started?
I go back to that young, ambitious 20-year-old young woman that still lives in me. She's still there, right? I still embrace her all the time. I wish she would have known how vital it was to incorporate self-care and really understanding what that meant, so that I could sustain in not just my industry, but in life. Because, I think we're not born into this life with resiliency. I think it's something we have to experience and learn. And yeah, so I really wish that young woman, that was just so wanting to be seen and heard and prove herself on the success ladder, in my career. I wish that she would have known, how worthy she was, how important it was to take time out and take breaks so that she didn't get to this, point of burnout and just complete exhaustion and leave an industry that she loved. She got to that point. I really did get to that point where I had to step away and leave the event planning industry for about 2 years.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's so many people that can resonate with feeling burnout at work or feeling burnout in general. And I think that especially after experiencing something like COVID, where people had to go home, so many people had to go home, and they actually were forced to stop working or they were forced to figure out how to work in a different way, that it was the great pause that so many people actually needed. And
Yes.
coming out of that also, I think people were like, "Wait a minute, like this I needed this. I needed a pause. I needed a break in a way that I didn't even know that I needed it." I felt like the earth told us that. That Mother Earth was like, "Oh, I need this break," because we started to see dolphins go back to places they hadn't been, and we saw the oceans get cleaned up. We saw the atmosphere get cleaned up because there weren't as many cars driving around. And it was amazing what that impact was in just a few years, even just after the first year, just how incredible that was.
Yeah.
And, how did you identify that you were feeling burnout? Like, what were the signs for you specifically?
So, I go back to the year was 2015. So I've kind of been almost on this 10-year journey where I started to, I'm celebrating in August my 10-year anniversary of being a non smoker. I smoked cigarettes for 20 years and I love,
Wow. Wow.
yeah. And so, as I started to strip away some of these vices that I was hiding behind, like smoking, like drinking, in excess, I think it began to shine the light even deeper on some things that were really going on inside of my body and inside of my mind. And I
Mm,
really started to, first on an emotional level, really just felt disconnected from myself. Um,
mm,
and to go back to the stopping of the smoking, I knew, 10 years ago, okay, if I give up this thing I loved smoking more than life itself. I was in a very toxic relationship with my cigarette.
mm.
I knew I needed to replace it with something. And so that's when I really started going to yoga classes. And I eventually became a certified yoga instructor on that journey. But that unraveling, that allowed me to be able to tap into my physical body and start to feel and start to really resonate with some things I had been stuffing in my physical body. Um,
Mm,
and so, the emotional, disconnection, the exhaustion, the loss of energy. I'm a high energy, high vibing person at the core. And, I just didn't have this zest or zeal for life anymore. It was hard for me
mm.
to even walk in the door of my office. I had two business partners at the time, and we had grown a company to be a multi-million-dollar company in the event planning and incentive world. And, we'd hit the mark of success, right? And it was
Yeah.
just this empty feeling
Hmm.
that, what I'm doing didn't really matter. I wasn't making an impact. I wasn't making a difference. And then, I really began to really, you know, look at things on an even deeper level of back to COVID, my alcohol intake really increased during COVID. I think I'm not alone in that. I think we all kind of started to we had to go through this shift, and a lot of people were drinking more, at least in my circle of friends and close colleagues and family. And, I got to the point of, I remember being in my kitchen and I loved wine. I had this beautiful relationship with Kendall Jackson Chardonnay. He and I went to bed together every night. I mean, I loved a good buttery chard. And, I'm into the sensations, the five senses, so smoking and drinking and all of it just was just this sensual experience for me.
Yeah.
And, um, I remember cutting up vegetables. I was at my kitchen. I loved to have a glass of wine when I was cooking. I loved to pair my wines with my food. And in my mind, I created a story. We create stories for ourselves. We tell ourselves lies sometimes. And my lie was, hey, it's wine. Wine is prestigious. It's, there's a status symbol there, it's kind of sexy. And, I'm moderately drinking. moderation to me was 1 or 2 glasses a day, right? Like, yeah. So, I mean, I was making up this story of what I felt was acceptable, but I'm cutting up these vegetables, and I literally, I remembered at that point, okay, I'm gonna get serious about stopping drinking, and I started salivating. I remember this like I could feel the addiction in my body start to come up, and I could feel this sense of like I have to go get a bottle of wine right now. And I stopped cutting up those vegetables, and I got in my car and I drove to the liquor store right around the corner, and I got
Mm,
my bottle of wine. And it was just this realization that I'm feeling these physical sensations now of this addiction that is living in my body.
mm,
And so just the realization of these vices that I was clinging onto and holding on to help me de-stress. I was telling myself it was helping me calm down, relax after a busy day, but it was really fueling so many wounds and so many pain points inside,
mm.
emotionally, physically, and mentally.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right that because people were home during COVID, one, and number two, because it could be lonely. And loneliness doesn't mean that you're literally all by yourself. There are people who have relationships and are still lonely in those relationships also. And
Yeah,
so I think that that part of it definitely fostered any possible addictions and any other stuff that could come up. And it was so
yeah,
interesting to me to also sit and watch and go, wow, like things are shifting and changing, and people are alone with their thoughts right now, being home after having COVID. And so, how are people managing being alone with their thoughts? And what is that like, right? When you actually have to sit with it a little bit. And it was definitely a time of sitting with a lot of stuff if you weren't one of those businesses that were, super busy during COVID, which was most of them. And
yeah,
it's I think it's such an interesting thing to recognize it. I remember being in my 20s and being a very social drinker. And as a social drinker, also at one point saying to myself, I drink enough that I wonder if this is my way of life, or is this something that's like, no, I am actually being social. So I remember I took 30 days off just to give myself some sort of idea around it. And it was nice to come out of the 30 days and be like, yeah, no, that was fine. Like I could not ever drink again and it wouldn't be a big deal. But you don't know sometimes. And I think that's part of it is it's that daily kind of the habits that we end up picking up in our world, right? Whatever it might be. It might be for a lot of people it's food. It's that extra, it's a scoop of ice cream every night before bed just because it's in the freezer and you have it and it's become a habit, not something where you really wanted the ice cream and you're looking for, a little something sweet to top the night off. So I think it's interesting to be able to recognize when we're feeling a certain way and then also answer the call to whatever that is, because you're right, we are amazing storytellers. We will tell ourselves whatever story we need to get,
yeah,
to make ourselves right, and our brain will just go on this little loop, and we have to know when am I telling myself stories that may not be true? Like, can we catch ourselves in that and stop and go, okay. So I love that all of this brought you to, congratulations, by the way, on really honing in on what your relationship was with probably some, deep seated trauma in a way, and all of that stress and all those things, and figuring out and saying, hey, like I'm done with cigarettes, I'm done with alcohol, because those are two really addictive things.
yes,
And even socially speaking, right, it's also still social to have a cigarette in many circles. So when I'm in California, nobody smokes in California, but outside of California,
yeah,
it still happens, and I see it in Europe still very popular.
oh, yeah,
It's still, again, very social, very normalized. And I
yes,
would say that wine as well. And I love how you even were describing how you were justifying it to yourself. You're like, oh, this is my very bougie way of living. Like, I drink wine. Hello, I'm not a beer drinker. Oh, I'm not slinging vodkas. No, 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 I'm wine. Like, it's
yeah,
true though. These are 100% how we talk ourselves in and out of things. And so that's, just part of the journey. Talk to me about like the time of sitting with, okay, I'm burnt out, I'm getting rid of these addictions. Now you're doing some yoga teacher training. You're starting to dive into that world. What were the tools that were introduced to you that really helped you go, "Oh, this is a tool that's going to actually help me transmute pain into passion and out of help me these are going to things that are going to transition me out of fear into confidence." Like, what were those tools for you?
Yeah, it's great because, it started with yoga and, my yoga journey, it's so funny when I remember thinking, oh, I'm going to sign up to learn about yoga. And I didn't realize I didn't really want to be a teacher. I just wanted to learn. I wanted to educate myself. I found the philosophy very intriguing and I wanted to learn about the origin and where it came from. And that just was really resonated with me. And the more I learned, I felt like the less I knew. And it was a journey that I thought was also going to be very upbeat and positive, and it ended up being quite painful looking at the shadow sides
Mhm.
of us, of myself. And so that's when I literally resigned from I sold my shares of the company. I was the third owner of a business, and that yoga journey kind of just connecting with my body was step one, and going through these asanas or these postures. And I remember someone along the journey saying, "Hey, Sarah, do you meditate?" And I remember thinking, 10 years ago, I was like, oh gosh, hell no. Like that sounds like hell to me. Like I am a go, go, go. I can't turn my mind off. Like, the typical answers you get when you talk to people who have that mindset about meditation. Well, eventually that was and still is probably my greatest tool and my anchor of stability, of
Mhm.
peace, of calm, of structure. And the beautiful part is that once I really, I've always said the hardest part of anything is deciding, is committing. There are layers. I think there are layers of commitment that we kind of put ourselves through, like, oh, I'll do this when X happens, or, we give ourselves these excuses. But when you get to that level 5 or level 10, I'm going all in. And that's how I got about meditation. And it has changed my life in so many ways. And now, I don't need anything except for my presence, my body, my time. And I'm a twice a day meditator for 20 minutes a day, or, twice a day, 20 minutes. And all I can say is that that has been for someone like me who's experienced a lot of childhood trauma. I'm a daughter of an alcoholic, so alcoholism runs really deep generationally,
Mm.
family codependency, people pleasing, all addictions, all of these things that kind of go back to that trauma that you were talking about earlier.
Mhm.
My nervous system, I learned through these modalities, was just really set. If you think of it a thermostat, high to low or cool to hot, my nervous system was just innately on a high hot temperature all the time. And meditation has helped me unstress and de-stress and get that thermostat down, get that nervous system so that it's regulated at a baseline that is what you would really consider normal. And I don't think I really realized that until I started
Mm.
practicing and becoming really dedicated. So meditation, I am a huge fan of. And then the other piece is breath work.
Mm.
Seppi, who has been on your show, Seppi and I, we have collaborated to do this incredible, we call it pause. You were talking about the pause earlier during COVID, and
Yeah.
it's similar to that concept, and Seppi is a somatic breathwork teacher, and breathwork is an incredible tool to really, again, use what's already in us. There's nothing you need except for the trust of who's guiding you and your time, and you can really let go of some stuck trauma and stuck energy in your body through breath work. It's
Yeah,
very healing.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, yes, and yes. And I've had many practitioners and guests on who use breath work as part of the process in the work that they do. And I love that breath work is such more mainstream than it used to be. Like
Yeah.
breath work is not really something you really heard much about 20 years ago, whereas now you hear about it much more. Meditation has definitely been around, but I think more people practice today. More people are conscious about that than they ever were. And it's really beautiful to watch all of these modalities actually show up that are so helpful and
Mhm.
so regulating for the nervous system. And for those of you who, again, are, running around with a shot nervous system, possibly because you're overworked or overthinking, the breath work, the movement. I mean, yoga is certainly a form of somatic therapy because you're moving through your body. And it's so funny because I had someone say, "Oh, well, yoga's so slow." And I remember when I used to say this too, is long before I actually got into a true yoga practice. And oh, it's just so slow. And now the yoga class I go to is almost like a hit class. It's actually the opposite of any kind of like extra slow movement. But that's the beauty of something like yoga is you can go to a class where it's actually really upbeat, kind of fast. You're getting your sweat on and it's a full body workout. And then other times it is much more of a flow and you're
Mhm.
getting in these deep stretches and you're getting to move your body and move things around. And when I had breast cancer, which was when I was 40, so 7 years ago, I remember coming out of surgery and just not feeling myself. It had been quite the journey. It had been a lot of doctors, it had been a lot of second opinions, and just lots of deciding what I was going to do. And I ended up healing holistically after surgery. So I did have surgery to remove the tumor and to do a reconstruction. And after that, I was like, there's no pharma I'm going to take. There's no chemo, no radiation. None of that is going to be for me. And I believe that being able to move through the comfort and confidence of making those decisions for myself
Yeah.
was because I was also getting into my body because I
Yeah.
felt so out of my body. I felt like I couldn't lay on my stomach for the longest time. I was scared I was going to break my boobs. I mean, it was a whole thing in my mind of
Right.
trying to just understand what's happening. And I remember going to a yoga class and feeling so defeated because I knew I needed the movement. And I know that when you go to a yoga class, that there's no pressure to have to do what everyone in the room is doing. If you want to sit there and lay there on the floor the whole time, it's completely acceptable. And so
Absolutely.
not just feeling that way, but also feeling like I want to be able to also do what we're doing as a group, as a collective, and not being able to do it was super defeating. And I found a yoga class that was specifically for breast cancer survivors. And the moment I walked into the room, the energy of that for me was amazing because I realized I'm in a room of people just like me. And the minute I got into position, I started crying.
Mm.
And but that's the beauty of being able to release those traumas. It's the ability to release whatever is crunching up on the inside and to just let it go and let it come out, right? It's coming up, so we're going to let it come out. And
Yes.
that was probably my most pivotal moment of having an appreciation for yoga because it was such a big part of my healing process as well. And it's just such a great practice. And y'all, if it's something you haven't tried, I highly, highly recommend. Single guys, I'm telling you, go to yoga class. It's full of beautiful young women.
Yes, we need more of that, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. So,
Mhm.
it's one of those things where it's just the movement is so great. And I believe that I get a lot of men who are like, "Oh, I gotta go get my workout and it's gotta be, rough and tough." That's fine. Go do that. And learn how to regulate your nervous system by the discipline of going to something like yoga where you have to slow down. And for us ladies, we usually are moving so fast in our lives, whether you have kids or you're a working woman, all the things. And so it's a beautiful opportunity to allow yourself also that reset, and upregulating if you need to
Yeah.
re-energize and to get more movement in, to jump up and down and strengthen your bones and just all of the ways. And getting back to the breath for sure is such a huge piece of it, of just how we get centered and grounded so that we can actually clear our thoughts and clear our mind and clear those cobwebs away and actually do what we need to do. So Sarah, you have, this really great quote that you would put on your intake form, and I have to say it because it's such a good one, and I feel like it's worth talking about. It's self-care is giving the world the best of you instead of what's left of you, and that's a quote actually by Katie Reed. And I think that one is such a beautiful mantra because too often we are left at the end of the day with just literally leftovers to pass out.
Yeah.
And tell me what resonates the most with you around that quote.
Gosh, it's just pouring from an empty cup. We can't do it, right? I mean, it's really have to that getting that visual of, two cups and one's completely full and one's, empty and literally seeing the water go into the other cup. And it's really just that remembrance of we cannot continue to go on the hamster wheel of life, doing all these things, staying active, reaching for the goals, and depleting ourselves unless we really get some clarity about what is self-care, what is it for me? And, you were taught yoga, breath work, there are so many different modalities of yoga, right? Like think about all the different types of Western and Eastern yoga. So it's also still this belief system I have of there's no one right way, so I really believe that you have to find things that resonate with you, to find things that light your soul up, that you feel that just like when you entered that room of people, you kind of knew you were home, you were like, this is my tribe, these are
Yeah.
my people, this energy is going to help me heal. And it's that way with self-care. You first have to really become aware of your needs, of your weaknesses. That's the first step, is total become conscious and aware of where you're lacking, and to be able to really have that conversation with yourself, and then to stay open, and to stay open and ask for guidance, ask for help, where can I go, what can I, what brings me joy, your this show is all about, mad love and joy, and like going back to, okay, remember when I was a child, like what was it that brought me joy, what were some experiences that just really lit me up from the inside out. For me, it's just getting out in nature, a simple, walk, or sitting on my stoop and letting the sun hit my face. It doesn't have to be some like regimented, huge master chunk of time and plan. It's like taking these
Right.
little baby steps to fill your cup back up and really pour from that full, whole, loving cup that you've created for yourself so that you can serve more. We can do more and be more, but it's from this authentic place that allows us to really bring our whole self, the good and the bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Well, we are going to talk a little bit more about this when we come back from the break. We'll be gone for a couple minutes and we will be right back.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Sarah, one of the things that I love about the work that you do is you talk about redefining success. And that's a topic I love to talk about because I think so often people are bought into what they think success is because it's been presented to them most of their life through media, through movies, through family, and they have this idea of what they think success is. And no one, I'm not going to say no one, but oftentimes people forget to come back and redefine what that means for themselves. So I would love to talk a little bit about that. Like, what is it? How did you go from what was your initial definition of success and how did you go about redefining it for yourself?
I think my initial definition of success was get to the top, make 6 figures, make 7 figures, is really aligned with money and status and a title. Those were kind of my criteria markers. And, when you hit those benchmarks and you get there and you're like, well, wait a minute, why don't I feel happy? What's next? And you're just not fulfilled. That's where you have to kind of realign and really tap in and do some deeper inner work. And now success for me is how many people I can impact. And in how many people can I help and serve that maybe was that 10-year ago self that I've explained that maybe was riddled with exhaustion and burnout and addiction and, coping in a toxic environment. And even 20 years ago, my 20-year-old self that needed to know that, hey, it's not about all these accolades. It's not about hitting all these benchmarks with financials. Follow your heart. Your heart always knows the way. Follow your body. Connect your mind with your heart. Like, this stuff really works.
Yeah.
So success is about, making an impact, to change the world, to change how we live and operate in it and really operate from this place of peace. I really believe that we can make an impact and be at peace. It doesn't have to be this grind all the time.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So often I see people get into a story and the story looks like this. The story looks like, oh, well, I can either do this or I can do this. I can travel or I can work. I can wait till I retire and then I can start to XYZ, exercise, eat right, you name the things. And that is always interesting to me because I'm definitely someone who wants the best of both worlds.
Yes.
And it's in that happy medium for me. It's like I want to travel and work and I can do both. And I'll
Yes.
figure out how to make that happen. So I fell into events, not even understanding that there was a whole industry around it. And that's
Mhm.
been really fun for me because now I'm 20 plus years on the other side of my career, having done events for such a huge portion of that and continues to, to do events as well. And it's so fascinating because I'm like, oh, I've gotten to travel and see the world in some really beautiful ways through just that level of work, people being like, hey, we want to do our event in Budapest. It's like fantastic. I can't wait to plan us an event in Budapest and then stay a while and enjoy it. And then obviously industry events as well, being able to go to some really cool places and check out new venues. And that's been a dream because I didn't know it existed in that sense of it. And so I feel like too often times people get stuck in the limitation of something. And most of the time, it's a limitation that they have imposed. The limitation isn't actually there, right? When I was younger, if I had said to myself, oh, I can't afford New Zealand, but I believe New Zealand, I know there are people who travel there all the time, and some way, somehow, people figure that out. And then next thing you know, I'm getting invited to an industry event in New Zealand, and they're taking care of paying for it. And I was like, wow, like I manifested that. Like that's what it felt like for me, right? Because I was like, I didn't buy in to the impossibility. And if all of us were to continue to keep buying into the impossibility of things, or that we can't, then we'll be right. We will sit here and we will be right, and we will be sad, and we will mope and be upset that things aren't coming about. But if we can really lock into the possibility, that's where innovation happens, where people start to go, well, the ocean is dirty. How can we do something a better way? How can we clean it up in a better way? And then people start to bring the right groups together and get the right data together, and they start tinkering. And sometimes they're, I'd say most of the time, divinely led to come to a solution. And when I say divinely led, some of the best music, y'all, if you don't know this about so much of the music out there, was done under, a rock star who was sitting with himself doing mushrooms for a weekend and trying to figure out how to tap into his feelings. And he ended up writing these beautiful lyrics and beautiful songs. So that's why I said those divine downloads come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Sometimes it is something that shows up and rocks our world. Maybe that is a health scare, or watching someone in our family go through a health scare, or just a big life event. And these things have the ability to launch and propel us forward into solutions and into a better way. And we just simply have to tap into understanding like what is possible, and believing that there is possibility, and letting the rest of it just come together like it's supposed to, and without needing to have a huge level of control around it. And there's such a beautiful, beautiful way to tap in and do that. Now, Sarah, you have a course that you're designing, and I believe it's called Revive and Thrive. Tell us a little bit more about that, and tell us what we would be able to expect within that coursework.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so excited to launch this fall. And so Revive and Thrive is a program for ambitious corporate event planners. That's the key. They're ambitious, they're getting it done. They're checking off all the boxes. They don't need, to learn how to do their job any better. They're really good at it. But they may have been experiencing some of the things like the anxiety, the overwhelm, the exhaustion, and so I really want to talk to that audience that is borderline of feeling these things in the mental and the physical and the emotional bodies, so that they can renew and realign and just remember, right? I think the audience for this is going to be, it's a remembering. I want to bring them home back to themselves and have this and experience this remembering of how they are really self-care enthusiasts. And it's just going to be a redesigning of their day, of their life, so that they can keep that calm in the chaos of event planning. Because the reality is that when you have all these deadlines, you have, unrealistic expectations from clients sometimes, and you have very little sleep. You're eating while you're standing up. You're not drinking enough water. Like, let's really get real about a lot of planners' day-to-day reality and activities. You're traveling all the time. You're on airplanes. You're in different time zones. If you don't make self-care a priority, you are going to hit the wall. It's just a matter of when, not if. It really is. And so I'm really passionate about doing this group coaching and a supportive community so that we can come together and really start to bond and collaborate and understand, the similarities that we have. We're not
Yeah.
competition. We are united here. We're one community that has a
Right.
very important purpose to fulfill. And what we do is really important and it really matters. And I just want people's lights to continue shining, because if they get to a point that I did and experience that burnout and throw in the towel and give it all up, you know, I don't want that to happen in our industry. And I want the young hospitality professionals that are coming into this new really set the standard and have this as a baseline so that they
Mm.
can sustain, they can continue on this journey for a career, for a lifetime, but really be able to find that peace in the chaos, because it's chaotic. It just is. There's no
Yeah.
other way to explain it.
Yeah, that's the ebb and flow of life, right? There is a uh even if you don't intend on it, y'all, I consider myself to have one of the most flowy, spacious schedules. I do that on purpose in the work that I do. And even within that, there are days where I wake up late and it throws off my day, or maybe a client's running late and that throws off the day. I mean, last night my dog threw up and I'm trying to make dinner and it's like, oh gosh, now I have this to clean up and this is happening. And like sometimes just that's life, right? We've got these little monkey wrenches that come in there sometimes and things don't always go as perfectly planned. And we can choose how we want to respond to it. And when we have the right tools in our mindset, in our breath, in our body, then we're able to go, oh, look what just happened. No problem. Then we're just going to take it as it comes. I'll
Yes.
get to that. We'll handle it and we'll make a pivot. We'll be like water and we'll learn how to flow in and out of whatever the container is. And I
Yeah.
think that piece of it also can feel really good. The first half of my life, for sure, Sarah, was definitely full of lots and lots of travel, tons of events, and I would say probably more events than were necessary. But at the same time, it was just I was in such a flow around it, and I thought that's what I needed to do and where I needed to be. You want to be relevant, all of the things.
Yes.
And it's been interesting to take such a reset when I got breast cancer and to stop and just go, I'm going to do things differently because I didn't even know what I didn't know. So I wasn't fully recognizing. I thought I was getting like a massage every week, and I thought that was my big self care for myself.
Right.
And it was, yeah, that was like, that's what I thought it was. And
Yeah.
then when I really sat with it, I was like, oh, that's like that's a maintenance, a massage every week is maintenance.
Right.
And there are so many other things that we do for self-care, and even creating a daily practice out of like, how do I actually care for myself often and every day and very intentionally? And how do I make time to meditate for 20 minutes? How do I take time to just time out? Let's get a nap in there because I know that's what feeds my body and it feels good to do that during the day. How do I spend time eating more nourishing foods instead of whatever's quick and can help me get to the next thing on the list? And so it was nice to transition from something so hustly and very achievement driven into something with ease and flow and so much peace around it, because it gave me all the space to go and sit in nature every day, go take those hikes, go move my body. And I feel like that is the new structure. It's a new paradigm that anyone can embrace if they want to. Because once I made the decision to do it, I remember laughing and saying, wow, like I didn't need to hustle all these years. I didn't need to do it the way that had been done. That was literally killing me. I can
Yeah.
do this a different way. And so it's nice to come into this season of my life and just go, oh, things can be so different because I've redefined success and what that looks like. And I've redefined what's possible. I've
Yeah.
just opened up to the fact that I'm like, no, I don't have to work that hard. And I'm way, way more picky about which events I do, even from a client standpoint. Which ones am I going to actually take on and manage? And so that also, because you're right, it takes work and sometimes travel days are long and coordinating with everybody and all of the things that go into it. So I feel like there's such a beautiful opportunity for all of us to redefine success, to also take a look at what are the things that are your red flags in your own life, in the way that we heard Sarah share, even her recognition of like, ooh, I'm in the middle of making dinner and I'm willing to stop, get in my car, drive to the liquor store because I need that bottle of wine. Like, how that's a little red flag, y'all. And
Mhm.
can you recognize when those show up? And can you recognize the feelings that are showing up around them? That is honestly the first step. It's literally
Yeah.
just being able to identify, I see and I feel a red flag, and I need to just put it out there. I need to call it out so that you can make a shift.
Yes, you're so right. The actually after our foundation, so there's six modules, 6 weeks. Foundation is first, and it's about setting intention, right? And really showing
Mm,
up for yourself and creating this experience. But the second module is called the conscious truth teller. And it's about getting
mm,
real with yourself and really diving deep and owning your truth and knowing that you don't have to tell anyone else about it. No one has to share it if they don't want to, but to
yeah.
really do that deep dive and be like, okay, what am I pretending not to know? What do I really, where are those red flags and where do I want to hone in
Mm,
on, so that this is customized for each person so they can have that clarity and we can, you know, start to build this out and get to the eventual end result, which is really creating and redesigning this flowy way of being, this feminine, and even for the men out there, there are a lot of talks about the masculine and feminine in the workplace. And you know, we've got these type A event planners that lead with a very masculine energy. I have to bring in my type A masculine energy an awful lot
mhm.
when I'm in charge of, a multi-million dollar project that I'm leading, right?
Totally.
It's a
Yeah.
big deal. And so, to have this balance and to have the softness and the nourishment and the nurturing and that feminine loving essence is such a beautiful gift to be able to come back home to that and really feel this wholeness that I think is missing in the industry for a lot of people. You're so fortunate to have had the experiences that you've had to be able to redesign your life,
Yes.
and a lot of times it takes a very painful, life changing thing that happens. For you it was breast cancer.
Right.
And for others, I really want to shine the light on, it may not need to be something like breast cancer, but it could be something about, trauma that was from an accident you had where, you got
Mhm.
a head neck injury and it wasn't that big of a deal, but your body stored that, and it's coming
Right.
back up for you in certain ways. So it's just interesting, that people will start to identify, like, hey, this happened to me and I've not acknowledged it. I've buried it, I've stuffed it.
Yeah.
And I really want to be able to bring that to the surface for a lot of people, to help them see,
Beautiful.
shine the light there.
So good. So good. Yes. Yes. And for those of you that are tuning in today, I want to give you a nugget that has really helped me. And it's that anytime something comes up that is especially around anything I feel guilty about or shameful about, that is almost always the area that most people flee from, right? If they start to open a door and they see that guilt or shame sit in that room, they're like, shut that door, walk away, turn the lights off. But the freedom and the liberation actually comes in opening the door, shining a bright, bright light all over that guilt and shame, because it allows you to neutralize any of the power that you're giving it when you go send yourself into hiding when those things show up. It allows you to realign with your values. It allows you to be honest with yourself. And it's in the honesty, especially when we're honest with ourselves, that the freedom is what shows up.
Yes.
And that's such a huge piece of it. And that's so often where people take that misstep, and it's where they start storing lots of guilt and shame in that same room, and they don't want to look at it and they don't want to shine a light on it. But I'll tell you, if you just start, you will be so amazed at just how much it will clear your mind, it'll clear your heart, and it'll put you in such a different space. And it is coming from a place of power instead of a place of scarcity. And that's super, super important. That will dictate your confidence. It will also just allow you to be real. It allows you to be real and authentic. And that's what we all need more of. We need to know that, like, we're not the only ones going through whatever you're going through. I guarantee that whatever it is that you have any guilt or shame around, there are hundreds of other people that are carrying that same guilt or shame who just need to hear from someone else that they're not perfect, that these things also exist for other people. And it doesn't matter what labels we've slapped on ourselves. I was talking to a friend about this the other day, about how so oftentimes people like to slap a label of like, oh, well, I'm this religion, or I'm this belief system. And you go, okay, great. So that's a label, but it doesn't dismiss us all from still having a human experience.
Oh,
But we get sometimes so lost in the identity of, well, I'm a Christian preacher, so I must live perfectly all the time. And it's like, no, I've actually have people in my life who I know that have had affairs with Christian preachers. So no one's exempt. No one's exempt. And that's, it's true. No one is exempt. And so that's like, hey, there's a human condition here, and there are some things happening. And so can we just be real and all come to the table so we can also share these lessons with each other and have some compassion for what everyone is going through, because everyone's got their own stuff that we often don't get to see. Such a good show today, Sarah. You've been such a fantastic guest. You and I are going to do some content for the YouTube channel as well, which is going to be bonus content for those of you who are listening to the show today. You can catch that over at MADLOVE Your Life on YouTube. And if you want to get in touch with our guest today, then check out the show notes. Pop down into the comment section, and you are going to see a way to get all of the goods. If you want more Sarah, we have more Sarah for you. And the information is there. That is our show for today. And with that, until next time, may abundance always walk beside you. May joy always go before you. And may love always guide you on your path. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. We air live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Bold Brave TV. We hope to see you back next week. For more ways to connect with my guests, content, programs, and retreats, just head over to www.marydee.com and subscribe. That's MARYDEE.com.